Hello everybody. The women's movement I promised to tell you something about was such a vast subject. Where to begin? These days people think that newly in the internet what we are used to calling a shitstorm is a new phenomenon. This very vicious pouring dirt over somebody you don't know, about prejudices, about disabilities, about all these terrible things. I don't have to tell you, you know exactly what I mean, and people think that is a new phenomenon. Well, I'm sorry to tell you, you're wrong. It is not new. And that brings us to the women's movement. Already in the ancient Greek civilization, famous men, famous till today, have poured shitstorms. There is hardly another word for it, over women. And that went on. This is the oldest written pieces of this, proofs of this we have. There may have been some older, only we have no proof of it. And then it went on till today. And all through that time, there were individual women who wrote against it, who repudiated these allegations about all negative, the biology of women, the tasks, the role, the abilities, the disabilities mainly of women. I'm not going to quote. There's hundreds of quotes. If you want it, you will find it. But I'm not going to quote because I don't want to emphasize these. It hurts, being a woman. It hurts reading these unfounded allegations. It hurts just like any shitstorm does. So I'm not going to repeat it. I want to stress the positive side of this, the power with which women have fought for hundreds and hundreds, even thousands, the ancient Greek 2,500 years ago, against this. But for about 2,000 years, almost, it was just individual women who wrote against it. All of this happened in writing, of course. And that wasn't enough to get a movement moving. You need more people to get moving. And it was in the 18th and even more in the 19th century that it got properly moving. The 18th century is the age of enlightenment, of course. Now, the idea was really men, in the clear sense of the word, not in the sense of humankind, men wanted to be able to enlighten themselves against the prescriptions, the narrowness of religions. They wanted to open up their horizons and think for themselves. And women were along with it, alongside with the men. And then, particularly in the revolutions, which were exceedingly important, 1789 in France, 1830 and 1848, in many countries. By the way, I'm not only talking about Europe, some countries in South America, Middle America, North America, Northern Africa, Southern Asia, Australia, nearly all around the world. This movement began, but it began in small bits. It began with women backing up the men. And many of the men, it was a class thing. It was against the prescriptions of religions that narrowed things down, and also it was a class thing. Lower class men rebelling against the privileges of the upper classes. And first, women backed up their men. Then to find that they weren't included. It was mankind in the single sense of the word. It wasn't about humankind. And so, when women realized they weren't in this, all over the place, different groups came up that fought for the rights of women. For example, there were those who fought for the rights of unmarried women. You see, for their education and their professional training. You see, the idea went that a woman wouldn't need a job because first her father, then her husband would provide for her. Yeah, that's the theory. In practice, many women never married, so they had to look after themselves. And there were no jobs for them. It wasn't part of the ideas of their societies. So that was some who fought for this. Other women in other groups fought for the rights of married women. In most of the countries around the world, the moment a woman married, she, in the law, in the eyes of the law, all but ceased to exist. She lost her complete property when she married. It went to her husband. She lost the right over her children, or she had no right over her children once she married. So they fought for the right of the married woman, also to divorce if worse comes to worse. Other groups, again, fought for the sexuality of women, their right to birth control, knowledge of birth control. So to stop these endless pregnancies, the right to abortion if all went wrong. And finally, perhaps the most well-known, but not the most important, were the suffragettes, of course, those fighting for suffrage. That's another word for the right to vote for representatives in Parliament, and also the right to be elected as representative in a Parliament. And those are the most well-known because they were the loudest. But they were by no means the most important. These different groups were all important. And because there were so many groups, and they got together, they joined forces. That is how a proper movement in the 19th century came up. And they were very successful in many ways. We, women of the 21st century, owe a lot to those women 2 centuries ago that fought for lots of things and won lots of things for us. Not all yet, but quite a lot. And that ended the first, we now call it the first women's movement. It ended in 1914. First World War put an end to all kinds of things, including the women's movement. But 50 years later, they get moving again. And I'll tell you about that next time. Bye.